Welcome, dear listener, to Snoring Tales. My name is Jan, and tonight I invite you to leave behind the weight of the day, to let your thoughts soften, and to allow your heart to drift into a story where every moment flows slowly, like leaves falling in the breeze. Take a deep breath in, hold it gently, and let it out with ease. Again, breathe in calmness and breathe out the noise of the world. Tonight's story begins in the tender glow of early autumn. Imagine a quiet little town where every street is lined with tall maple and oak trees. Their leaves, once green and full of summer's energy, now shimmer in hues of amber, rust, and gold. The sunlight falls through the branches like honey, spilling warmth onto the cobblestones below. In a small brick building on Maple Street, Clara sits by her window. She's a woman who loves the quiet hours of the evening, when the world slows down and her thoughts can wander freely. A knitted blanket rests over her knees, and in her hands she holds a steaming cup of chamomile tea. The scent drifts upward, soft and calming, mixing with the crispness of the cool September air that slips through the open window. Clara watches as a single leaf loosens from its branch and dances gently to the ground. It twirls slowly, as if reluctant to land, before settling softly on the pavement. She smiles at the simple beauty, reminded once more that change, though inevitable, carries its own grace. After a while, she decides to step outside. She puts on her favorite cardigan, its pockets deep and warm, and wraps a scarf loosely around her neck. Before leaving, she glances in the mirror, tying her hair into a braid that falls gently over her shoulder. Her bag, an old but sturdy leather satchel, waits by the door. She lifts it and steps into the hallway. As she walks down the narrow staircase, the sound of hurried footsteps echoes upward. A young man appears, nearly hidden behind a large cardboard box that wobbles dangerously in his arms. He stumbles on the last step, and Clara instinctively reaches out. "Hold on," she says softly, steadying the box with both hands. The young man lets out a breath of relief, laughing nervously. "Thank you. I almost lost it there." Together they carry the box outside, where the cool air greets them. The box is awkward, but Clara steadies it with ease. When they finally set it down, the young man grins. "You've saved me from disaster. I don't know how I thought I could manage this alone." Clara smiles, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Sometimes we all need a little help. With gratitude shining in his eyes, he picks up the box again, this time with more confidence. "Thank you, truly. I'll remember your kindness." He continues down the street toward the post office. The day feels a little lighter to him now, as though Clara's small gesture has lifted not only the box, but also his spirits. When he reaches the post office, he finds a short line forming at the counter. Behind him stands an elderly man, holding nothing but a single envelope, yellowed at the edges, sealed with care. The young man notices the frailty in the older man's hands and steps aside with a gentle smile. "Please, sir, go ahead of me. You've only one letter, and I can wait." The elderly man hesitates, surprised, before nodding gratefully. His voice trembles slightly as he says, "That's very kind of you." The young man simply shrugs, warmth spreading through his chest. "It's nothing." But to the older man, it is not nothing. It is a reminder that kindness still lives in the world. He steps forward, mails his letter, and leaves with a heart lighter than it has been in days. As he walks along the sidewalk, the golden leaves crunching softly beneath his shoes, he feels as though the town itself is smiling with him. On the corner, he notices a small cafe with its windows glowing warmly. Inside, people talk quietly over cups of coffee and tea. Drawn by the comfort within, he pushes open the door. The bell above jingles softly, and a wave of warmth and roasted coffee greets him. He orders a cup of tea and sits by the window, gazing out at the street where children laugh and dogs tug playfully at their leashes. He sips slowly, letting the warmth spread through him. The letter he mailed carried words of love, sent to a daughter who lived far away. For weeks, he had felt forgotten, but now, with the young man's kindness fresh in his heart, hope stirs again. Outside, Clara walks back home, her scarf tucked snugly around her neck. She does not know that her simple act of steadying a box has already set into motion a quiet chain of goodness, weaving from one person to another like a golden thread. The sun begins to dip lower in the sky, painting the clouds with strokes of rose and lavender. A soft wind moves through the trees, carrying the gentle rustle of leaves. In this town, as day turns slowly to evening, kindness drifts from heart to heart, unseen but deeply felt. And you, dear listener, are here with us, breathing slowly, resting deeply, carried by the rhythm of this story. Like Clara's kindness, let peace ripple through you. Feel your body sinking into rest, your thoughts softening, your heart becoming still. This is only the beginning, and in the parts to come, we will follow the path of kindness as it continues to travel through the town. But for now, let your eyes grow heavy, let your breathing slow, and allow the warmth of this story to carry you toward gentle dreams. The sun drifts lower, painting the rooftops of the town in soft gold. The streets glow warmly, and the long shadows of trees stretch across the cobblestones. It is a time when the air carries both energy and calm, when day is not yet gone, but night quietly waits at the edge. Inside the small cafe where the elderly man sits, a quiet hum of voices surrounds him. The gentle clinking of cups, the low murmur of conversation, the sound of steam rising from the espresso machine, all of it blends into a comforting rhythm. The man's tea is warm between his hands, and with every sip he feels steadier, more anchored. At the next table sits a young woman, no more than 20, with a sketchbook spread open in front of her. She has been watching the street, pencil moving quickly, trying to capture the patterns of light through the window. When she looks up, she notices the elderly man sitting quietly with his tea, and something in his posture, gentle, dignified, yet a little weary, catches her heart. She hesitates, then leans over and says softly, "Excuse me, would you mind if I sketched you? You look peaceful." The old man blinks in surprise, then chuckles. "Peaceful, you say? I don't think anyone has ever called me that. But yes, if it pleases you, I don't mind." The young woman smiles gratefully and begins to draw. Her pencil moves slowly, carefully, as though she is not just capturing his image, but also the quiet strength in his eyes. The old man sits still, sipping his tea, feeling oddly honored. No one has looked at him so attentively in years. When she is finished, she turns the sketchbook toward him. There, on the page, is his face, lined with age, softened with warmth, eyes shining gently. For a moment he does not speak. Then, with a voice thick with emotion, he says, "You've given me something I didn't know I needed. Thank you." The young woman blushes. "It's nothing, really. I just wanted to share what I saw, but for the old man, it is not nothing. It is a reminder that even in age, even in quiet moments, he still matters, still carries beauty worth noticing." He leaves the cafe with a lighter heart, the sketch tucked carefully into his coat pocket. The young woman watches him go, then packs her sketchbook, inspired to create more. She steps outside, where the cool breeze brushes against her cheeks. She notices a stray cat sitting by the alley, its fur dusty, eyes wide and searching. Without thinking, she kneels down, pulling a small piece of bread from her bag. The cat sniffs, hesitates, then eats gratefully. The young woman strokes its back gently, feeling the soft rumble of its purr beneath her fingertips. She whispers, "There you go, little one. You're not alone." And so the kindness flows again, first from Clara, then to the young man, then to the old man, now to a small, forgotten creature. Across the street, a shopkeeper watches the young woman with the cat. He has had a long day, his shoulders heavy, but the sight of her simple tenderness brings a smile to his lips. He thinks about the people who will come into his shop tomorrow, and he decides that he will greet each one with warmth, no matter how tired he feels. The shopkeeper locks his door for the evening and begins his walk home. On the way, he passes a man sitting on a bench, his hands buried deep in his coat pockets, his gaze fixed on the ground. The shopkeeper recognizes the look of weariness, the same look he himself carried earlier. Without hesitation, he pauses and says, "Long day?" The man on the bench looks up, startled, then nods slowly. "Yes, longer than I'd hoped." The shopkeeper sits beside him. "I understand. But tomorrow will come, and maybe it will be better." They talk for only a few minutes about the weather, about the changing season, about nothing important at all. Yet when the shopkeeper stands to leave, the man on the bench feels less invisible, less alone. Night begins to spread across the sky, stars appearing one by one, like scattered pearls. In this small town, kindness has touched stranger after stranger, weaving through lives in ways none of them could have predicted. And it all began with Clara holding out her hands to steady a box. So, dear listener, as you breathe slowly and let your body sink deeper into rest, remember that every gesture, no matter how small, can ripple outward. Feel that thought cradle you like a blanket. Let the story wrap around you, gentle and steady, carrying you toward dreams. The gentle rhythm of the town carried on into the afternoon, with every small act of kindness creating a ripple that touched someone new. As the sun hung a little lower in the sky, its golden rays poured warmly across the narrow streets, painting every wall, tree, and rooftop with a soft glow. It was that special time of year when summer was fading, but autumn had not yet fully claimed the days, a moment caught in between seasons, where the air carried both freshness and nostalgia. On a quiet street corner, the young man with the gray and black elk hound Freya walked slowly. Freya's paws patted lightly against the pavement, her ears twitching at every passing sound, the rustle of leaves, the giggle of a child, the faint hum of a bicycle in the distance. The young man had always loved this part of town. The shop windows changed like living stories with each season, and now they were beginning to bloom with oranges, browns, and deep reds. Pumpkins lined the glass displays. Cinnamon sticks were tied neatly in jars, and knitted scarves hung over wooden stands. He reached into his coat pocket and felt the smooth surface of his phone, but instead of pulling it out, he left it there. Days like this were too precious to be interrupted by glowing screens and endless notifications. He wanted to feel every bit of the crisp air, the sunlight warming his cheeks, and the faint scent of roasting coffee drifting from the cafe he had just passed. As they strolled, Freya suddenly tugged her leash, nose pressed toward the ground. The man looked down to see her sniffing at a small, woolly object. He bent and picked it up, an adorable little hat, soft to the touch, with playful bare ears stitched on top. He turned it over in his hands, noticing how new it seemed. Looking down the street, he spotted a stroller rolling slowly forward, guided by a woman in a warm sweatshirt. Every so often, a chubby toddler's hand reached out, tossing little belongings overboard without the slightest concern for where they landed. Smiling at the sight, the man jogged forward, Freya trotting happily beside him. "Excuse me?" he called gently, not wanting to startle the mother. She turned, her ponytail swishing behind her, eyes widening with slight surprise. "Is this yours?" he asked, holding out the tiny hat. Her face softened with relief as she immediately recognized it. "Oh my goodness, yes. Thank "Thank you so much," she said warmly. The child giggled in the stroller, clearly amused by their own little game of tossing and losing things. The man bent again, retrieving a small toy lying nearby, and handed it to her as well. The woman laughed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You've saved us quite the treasure hunt." She gave Freya an affectionate glance. The dog wagged her tail proudly, as though she too had been part of the rescue mission. As the woman pushed the stroller forward again, she felt lighter, almost as if her small burden of tiredness had been eased. Her toddler clapped their little hands, babbling happily at every passerby. People smiled and waved back, touched by the pure innocence of the child's joy. For the woman, it felt like the world itself had shifted slightly in her favor, all because of a stranger's thoughtfulness. A block ahead, she noticed a parking meter blinking red. The car parked in front of it looked old, but cared for, with quirky bumper stickers that revealed stories of its owner's life. Eye break for quilting, bees, and a logo from an animal rescue. She glanced around and spotted a parking officer slowly approaching, checking meters one by one. The mother hesitated for a moment, then slipped her hand into her sweatshirt pocket. Her fingers brushed against 2 quarters she had forgotten about, left over from a coffee purchase the previous week. Without much thought, she fed them into the meter. The red light turned green, granting the car another hour of safety. She smiled quietly to herself, looking down at her child. "Our little secret," she whispered playfully. The toddler giggled again, as if they understood. When the parking officer passed, he was distracted by the child's cheerful wave and smiled back, completely unaware that a small act of kindness had just prevented a ticket. Meanwhile, the car's owner, a woman returning from yoga with a mat slung over her shoulder, approached. She slowed as she noticed the unexpected time on the meter. Her brows lifted in surprise. She checked her watch, then looked around, trying to piece together what had happened. Realizing someone had paid on her behalf, she whispered softly, "Well, thank you, whoever you are." Sliding into her car, she tucked her mat into the back seat and drove off, humming along to a cheerful tune on the radio. At the next light, she noticed a man in a car beside her, waiting to merge into traffic. He seemed ready to pull away, but hadn't noticed the large paper bag sitting precariously on his roof. Inside was his dinner, neatly packed and smelling faintly of roasted herbs and bread. Without hesitation, the yoga woman rolled down her window, waving to catch his attention. At first, he looked puzzled, but then she mimed the gesture of lifting something over her head. Finally, lowering his own window, he heard her shout with a laugh, "Your food is on top of your car." He immediately slapped his forehead, laughing at his own forgetfulness. "Thank you," he mouthed with genuine gratitude. As the light changed, she pulled ahead, leaving him to retrieve his precious meal. Carefully, he lifted the warm bag and buckled it into the passenger seat as though it were a dear friend. Driving home, he hummed a tune softly, his heart warmed by the thoughtfulness of a stranger who had saved his dinner from disaster. His mood was so light that he barely noticed the traffic, only the golden light slipping gently into twilight. Back at his apartment building, he carried both his food and his mail inside. Sorting through the envelopes, he noticed one that didn't belong to him. It was addressed to the woman in apartment 3A. Instead of leaving it on top of the mailboxes as was common, he decided to bring it directly to her. Climbing the stairs, he matched his footsteps to the rhythm of the choir piece he had been rehearsing earlier. At her door, he knocked gently. Soon, the woman from 3A, with her warm smile and braided hair, appeared. He held out the letter with a simple, "This was in my box by mistake." She looked at it, her eyes brightening. "I've been waiting for this. You've made my evening," she said, clutching it to her chest. The man gave a small nod, as though bowing after a performance, then turned back down the stairs. Inside her apartment, the woman sat by her window with the crisp evening air drifting through the crack she had left open. She read her letter twice, savoring not only its words, but also the kindness of the neighbor who had delivered it. As night settled in, she slipped into her soft pajamas, tucked beneath her warm quilt, and thought about how she might return the favor. Perhaps a potted autumn plant, or maybe a loaf of pumpkin bread. With that thought, her eyes grew heavy, and she drifted into sleep, where in her dreams, every neighbor in the town was planning a little surprise of kindness for the next day. The gentle rhythm of kindness had started to weave itself like a soft melody across the town, flowing from one person to another, steady and calm. By the time the sun had dipped lower in the sky, painting the streets with golden light, the warmth of those simple gestures had touched more hearts than anyone could have guessed. One of the people who felt it most deeply was the little girl who had dropped her toy earlier that morning. She had been holding on to her patched-up teddy bear ever since the kind woman returned it to her. Now, she walked home with her mother, holding the bear close to her chest, as if it had absorbed the magic of the day. Her mother noticed how quiet she was, not with sadness, but with a soft and thoughtful look on her face. When they reached their home, a modest brick house with a small front porch, the little girl tugged at her mother's hand. She whispered, "Mama, can I do something kind too?" Her mother smiled and nodded, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's face. The girl went inside, found her small box of crayons, and carefully drew a bright picture: a house, a rainbow, and a dog playing in the grass. Beneath the rainbow, she wrote in shaky letters, "Thank you for being nice." She didn't know exactly who she wanted to give it to, but she felt that passing it forward mattered more than keeping it to herself. The next morning, She slipped the drawing into the mailbox of the neighbor who often sat alone on his porch. He was an elderly man with kind eyes, but he rarely spoke more than a few words. The girl never knew much about him, only that he always seemed a little lonely. When he opened his mailbox later that day, the drawing nearly brought tears to his eyes. He pressed the paper gently in his hands, as if it were fragile, and for the first time in a long while, a genuine smile spread across his face. He folded the drawing carefully and placed it on his table where he could see it every day. That simple act gave him a sense of connection he hadn't felt in years. The next day, he decided to do something in return, not out of obligation, but out of the warmth that had bloomed quietly in his heart. He baked a small loaf of bread, something he hadn't done since his wife passed away. With trembling hands, he wrapped it in a cloth and carried it next door. The girl's mother opened the door, surprised to see him standing there. "I thought maybe you'd like this," he said softly. "It's just bread, but it's fresh." Her eyes widened, and she thanked him warmly, inviting him to sit for a while. He hesitated, but finally stepped inside, and for the first time in a very long while, he joined someone for a meal. The laughter of the little girl, the smell of the fresh bread, and the warmth of being included reminded him of the joy he thought he had lost forever. From that day forward, the man began to sit less often alone. He shared stories from his youth with the little girl, who listened with wide-eyed wonder. In return, she drew him more pictures, each one a burst of color, a rainbow or a smiling sun. It was as though two generations had found each other, bound together by one simple thread of kindness. Meanwhile, across town, the woman who had once returned the teddy bear found herself reflecting on the ripple she had unknowingly started. She sat in a quiet cafe, sipping tea, watching people walk by. There was a stillness inside her, like the calm after a soft rain. She realized that the world had always been filled with opportunities to be kind. She had just needed to slow down enough to see them. Her thoughts drifted back to the day she had picked up that teddy bear from the ground. It had seemed like such a small, almost invisible thing to do. Yet now, she understood that even the smallest choices could spark a chain reaction that reached far beyond what she could see. As dusk settled again, the town seemed bathed in a glow that wasn't only from the fading sunlight, but from the quiet connections formed by kindness. The yoga teacher still felt lighter each time she helped a stranger cross the street. The dog owner found herself smiling more easily, greeting neighbors she used to pass without notice. The elderly man felt alive again, his heart open where it had once been shut. And the little girl, she dreamed at night, not just of toys and fairy tales, but of ways she could bring happiness to others. Her dreams were filled with colors and laughter, echoes of a truth she was only just beginning to understand. Kindness grows when it is shared, and once planted, it keeps blooming in unexpected places. That night, as the stars shimmered overhead, each person who had been touched by the chain of kindness went to sleep with lighter hearts. None of them knew how far their simple acts had traveled, but each carried a quiet hope that tomorrow someone else would feel the same gentle spark. The town rested under the velvet blanket of night, with kindness lingering in the air like a soft lullaby. It was a story without an ending, a melody that continued to play as long as someone, somewhere, chose to be gentle, to be caring, and to be kind. The days passed gently in the little town, each sunrise carrying with it the quiet echo of kindness that had already begun to settle into the hearts of its people. What had once been a single small act, a toy lifted from the ground and returned with a smile, had blossomed into a tapestry of shared warmth, each thread stronger because it connected to another. The little girl, who had first felt the magic when her teddy bear was returned, had begun to see the world with new eyes. Every walk with her mother became a chance to notice something beautiful. A flower leaning toward the sun, the soft wag of a neighbor's dog's tail, the sparkle in the eyes of the elderly man when she handed him her colorful drawings. She had learned, without anyone teaching her in words, that happiness grew not from keeping things close, but from giving them away. One quiet afternoon, she sat on the porch steps with her mother. The air was warm, carrying the faint smell of bread, baking in someone's kitchen nearby. The girl leaned against her mother's arm and whispered, "Mama, do you think kindness ever ends?" Her mother smiled and shook her head softly. "No, sweetheart. Kindness is like the wind. You can't see where it starts or where it goes, but you can always feel it." The girl nodded slowly, her young heart content with the thought. She picked up her crayons once more, sketching another picture, this time of the whole town under a rainbow. She placed it carefully in her little box, saving it for someone who might need a smile one day. Meanwhile, the elderly man had found new purpose. Where once he had spent his evenings staring at the empty road, now he sat with the little girl and her mother, sharing stories and laughter. Sometimes he baked more bread or cookies and shared them with other neighbors. Each time he saw someone's face light up with gratitude, a piece of the loneliness inside him dissolved, replaced with warmth he thought had been lost forever. The woman who had unknowingly set everything in motion, the one who picked up the teddy bear, continued her quiet life, but with a new awareness. She walked slower through the streets, her eyes softer, her smile easier to find. In the small cafe where she often sat, she noticed how even holding the door open for someone could change the energy of a moment. Sometimes she left a little note for the barista, nothing more than a "Thank you for your smile," scribbled on a napkin. She never expected anything in return, but the joy she felt lingered long after. The yoga teacher, too, carried her calm spirit out into the world. She offered her students gentle words at the end of class. Take this peace with you and let it touch someone else. She didn't always know who her students met afterward or what they did, but she trusted that peace, once given, would always find its way forward. The dog owner, who had once been simply grateful for a stranger's kindness, now noticed how her own small gestures, a wave to a passerby, a smile at a shopkeeper, lifted her days. She had started to believe that life was less about the big moments and more about the little exchanges, like sparks lighting a path in the dark. By now, the whole town seemed a little softer, as if wrapped in a gentle blanket. Neighbors who once walked past each other without a word now paused to say hello. Children played with more laughter in their voices, knowing that kindness was not only welcomed, but celebrated. Even the air itself felt different, lighter somehow, like a sigh of relief carried on the evening breeze. One starry night, as the world grew quiet, the little girl drifted to sleep with her teddy bear in her arms. She dreamed of the rainbow she had drawn, stretching high over her town, covering every house, every street, every heart. In her dream, people passed kindness from one to another like candles being lit, until the whole world glowed with a steady, comforting light. And though it was just a dream, in many ways it was also real, because kindness, once born, never truly disappears. It lingers in the smiles we remember, the gentle words that echo in our minds, the small gestures that soften even the hardest days. As the town slept, the chain of kindness continued, weaving itself quietly through tomorrow and the day after, touching lives that had yet to cross paths. It was a story without an ending, a lullaby without final notes, because kindness, once shared, becomes eternal. So the night wrapped its arms around the town, stars glimmering like promises overhead, and every heart rested a little easier, knowing that the simplest gift, a moment of kindness, was enough to change the world.